what's going on, guys? Welcome back. Today we are doing Tryhackme's new box, Cyber Kill Chain. This came out like, I think it said 8 days ago or something. This was actually requested in the Discord. So if you guys want to, request videos or just chat or be part of the community, join the Discord. Check out the Patreon. We've got a bunch of exclusive content in there. Make sure you like and subscribe to the videos. And let's go ahead and get into it. Didn't mean to click on that. All right. So first things first, the Cyber Kill Chain. Most people have heard of it. Most people don't realize it's been around since 2011. What that means is it's been around for almost 15 years now. And most people still, especially new people, do not understand the value. I can't explain to you or express to you how many people you say, do you know the Cyber Kill Chain, that are in, like first 5 years of their career? And they're like, I've heard of it or I know about it. But if you don't understand fully the Cyber Kill Chain, you have no idea the value you're missing out on. So this is the Cyber Kill Chain. This is actually Sand's article, but it's the newest one I could find that actually details what they were going for back then in 2011, because most people actually thought the Cyber Kill Chain is like this mental model, and it actually was just a piece of it. The whole article was something different, and everybody took the Cyber Kill Chain out of it and like ran with it, right? So you can see it was one of the first attempts to explain how attacks actually work. It's sophisticated attacks, right? We're not talking about script kiddies that click a button and get in. We're talking about sophistication, right? Here is 7 different goals, tactics, attacks, blah, blah, that they do. The original publication, this is what it looked like, right? Lockheed Martin, and they're the ones that created this, right? Did an amazing job of spreading this around and getting it to people, right? One of the things people don't realize is the kill chain itself came from the military. So most people in the military are familiar with the terminology and what it's supposed to look like, and that's where this came from. Lockheed Martin is a military government contractor, so it makes sense, right, that they followed that. And it's the structure of the attack. So some people, like especially new people, when they're learning, they say like, okay, cool, that's great, why do I care? Like, I've heard that so many times, like where people say, yeah, it's sure, why do I care that they mapped out like the stages of it? Well, because if you know the stages, there's 2 things that you know for sure. One, if you find an attacker in your environment, you know where they're at in their phase. Do you know how important this is? This is probably the single most important information you can have. Think about an actual battle, right? If my goal of a battle, right, like let's say like the Battle of Fallujah, right? The Battle of Fallujah, their goal was to take back the city of Fallujah, to give it back, right, to the local population. If my goal is to take back the city, right, that's my end goal. You don't know that as the defender. You have no idea what my end goal is. You probably have some idea, right, but you don't know. So when they're attacking Fallujah and they're spreading through, because what they were doing, the SEALs and the Marines and everybody were taking different stages, and every time they'd take one, they'd make a new outpost, they'd stay there, then they'd move forward, and they'd stay there, and they kept taking, right? It takes time to figure out, what are they doing, right? Like if I'm getting attacked, what are you doing? Is your goal to just come in and take over? Is your goal to move me out incrementally? Is your goal to even take the city back? Or is your goal you're trying to get to the other side of the city to go through, right? You want to clear this path for transport. What is your goal, right? Well, if I know your goal, it makes it so much easier to stop you, because, for instance, if you go back and look at this, if you're in the installation phase, if I catch you right here, what do I know? Well, it's safe to say, if I have enough information, that means you're not to command and control phase yet, but that's your next step. So I need to start looking and detecting for command and control. Something I see very common with new people is they go through and they find like someone try to download something, whatever, or I found a C2 beacon, right? And then they go back here and they go to delivery and they're like, let's look for someone that downloaded something. Why am I going back? I don't care about going back yet. Not saying you won't eventually when you do an investigation, but if I'm on command and control, the next step is actions on objective. That's the biggest, that's the boom, the ransomware, the oh crap. Why am I going back and looking for every other machine that got delivered, right? Not saying it's not possible, but I'm saying command and control, if that's where they're at, they're about to hit. So that means you need to identify what's happening quickly because you don't have much time, and you need to stop that ransomware, right? And you need to stop that C2 communications ASAP. So that means don't go back and look for everybody that downloaded XYZ unless it's going to stop you from doing the command and control. Go back and look at everybody being on that command and control network, right? And then stop that, right? Cut off the source. Now, there's better examples out there, but that's just an example, right? So we're going to go through these stages. There's 7 stages. We're going to go through them: recon, weaponization, delivery, exploitation, install, C2, and actions on objectives. So let's start with recon. Now, one thing I'll say is the whole point of the kill chain is if I can stop you at any of these phases, right, then I stop your attack. That's the entire purpose. I stop your attack. So what can I do if I know the kill chain? 1, I know where you're at in it, so I know what your next stages are, and I can start to prevent. 2, the other big thing is I know where to focus my efforts. Because think about a factory, right? And this is actually an example I got from John Hubbard, which is an instructor for SANS. But he does a lot of, if you know his background, he was an engineer, and he does a lot of mind maps. And one thing he did, is he created look at it like a factory, right? Think about like the Ford with the, God dang it, it's going to drive me nuts, but the assembly line, and how there's a stage, right? Stage 1, you come in here, you put the door on. Stage 2, you come here, you put the trunk on for cars, right? Stage 3, you put the engine in, right? You're doing all these steps in steps. Well, attackers do the same thing. And if you think of it that way, if I cut off, right? If I take out stage 2 where you put the door on, guess what? You don't have a finished car at the end, right? So that's the goal, right? So what I can do is I can start building my defense and focusing on stages. So if I can stop you from actually delivering the payload, that's really good. But what if I can't detect once you deliver the payload? What if all my detections and efforts are on the delivery? And I see this all the time too, right? If I see a lot of times people go, okay, we're going to have a ton of defense and detections right here on exploitation because I don't want people running anything without my permission. I don't want them doing anything, right? I see this all the time. Problem is, sick. It's really hard to get an exploit running on your machine. But if I'm smart and I can obfuscate and I can hide it and run it in RAM and all this other stuff, now guess what? Now once I exploit something, I'm past your only real defense and I'm off to the races. So if you defend every stage of it as best you can, you're starting to stop every stage of that attack, and it is hugely important, which is why the Pyramid of Pain came out, because it goes right hand in hand. So you have the recon phase, which I'll talk about briefly, but this is where people are doing reconnaissance against you, right? This is really hard to stop at this stage. I mean, there's ways to do it, but it is really hard to stop at this stage. What I mean is, for one, passive recon, right? If I'm going to start looking at DNS records, whois records, DNS dumpster, like going to OSINT resources and things like that, I can't stop you from doing that. It's in public information. I can't do anything, right? I won't even know you're doing it. But when you start talking about active recon, right, people scanning your network, right? An example of this is a detection that I created years and years ago is, okay, every time we see someone scanning our network, which is, you can't do this in just a vacuum, meaning you can't just do this because you'll block a ton, but you have to have the right guardrails around it. But basically, every time someone scans the network, right, using certain user agents and things like that, go ahead and automatically block that IP. Is that going to stop anybody? No. But it stops that scan, and then you just unblock the IP later because it's probably a rented IP anyway, right? And you can automate all that. So does it help you detect? If you do it right, because you can have it block, right? And then when it's done blocking, you have a repository where you're storing that. And once it's stored, you can have a check where does that IP ever come back, right? Does anything else happen? Is there anything associated? And that's the internal threat intelligence that you need. So can you stop reconnaissance? Can't stop it, but you can definitely help it, right? Okay, so now it's saying, now, like I said, at this stage, you're probably not going to stop the attack. You might slow it down. You can hinder it a little bit, but you're not going to stop it. So as already mentioned, active recon can get noisy. Yeah, you can definitely get really noisy, and then it's just pointless. Physical recon is typical, where the attacker might visit the target premises. This is easier or harder to detect, but you can start to play it out, right? Have security in place, have cameras, pay attention. If you see something, say something. Those types of things can be put in place here. Defense tactics include minimizing public information. So make sure you have something going out and looking at your public information and removing any, sanitizing it, basically removing anything that's not needed. Countermeasures achieved by limiting information. Yep. Monitoring and analyzing network traffic logs, right? That you have to. Otherwise, how do you know what's going on in your network? So what is the term for using search engines to reveal sensitive information and confidential files? Well, this is actually kind of interesting because, let's see. The reason I say it's interesting is because the term is Google dorking. I know that. I didn't see it in here, though. Oh, it's right here. So the reason it's interesting is because that is the term, but Google dorking specifically is just for Google, so you can dork all of the search engines. What type of recon is it where the attacker checks the social media page? So keep in mind, there are ways to kind of get around this, and you can see what I mean by get around it is there are some things you do where social media interaction is not passive and it becomes active, right? You message the person, you do things like that, you actually engage. You like the person or like connect, whether it's LinkedIn or friends on Facebook or something. You're starting to get into the active realm, right? Because if you have permission to do recon on somebody, you might not have permission to touch, but to interact with their people. That's usually a different permission. So now weaponization. So once you get enough information gathered about the target, the attacker proceeds to the next stage, weaponization. Based on the information the attacker has gathered about the target system, they can create a payload tailored to the discovered vulnerabilities. So if I know, for instance, if you guys watch my Patreon, I did a whole video about, I think I did it on Patreon. I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure I did. But I did a video about like gathering information about from like job postings and stuff like that. So if I do a job posting and I see you are looking for a Python developer in your Azure ADO and for this XYZ app, well, sweet. I now just got all the information I need to create my payload. I'll write it in Python. I'll write it for Azure ADO development environment, and I'll write it for that app. Boom. Now you won't notice it because it's part of your regular processes. So I start to weaponize it, right? That's really what they're talking about here. Start building based on the recon, what you're going to do, how you're going to attack. This is a big difference in script kiddies and like new freshers, whatever you want to call them, hackers that are new. It's kind of like if you go talk to special forces in the military, they will tell you, and I can't remember his name, but Brent is his first name, and he was a Delta Force, but he has a really good podcast, and he talks about it all the time. The battle is won before it starts. It's won in the preparation, right? And I think that's actually the actual true quote is from Art of War, but the battle is won before it ever starts. It's the same thing with hacking. If you do your recon, your job is so easy to actually in here or to actually take over. And the thing is, a lot of people, especially new people, they are so hypnotized by the fact that like if I click 6 buttons I could take over a machine, that they never actually do the recon because they don't know how, because they don't really understand the underlying technologies. They just understand the tools that other people designed. And so When you're weaponizing, the more information you understand about the target, the much easier the rest of these phases will become. So what technique is mentioned to evade detection by making a challenge to analyze the malicious code? And do they actually have it in here? Let's see. Attackers, I believe it's just going to be obfuscation, but I can't find it. All right, let's see. Furthermore, if the email includes an encrypted zip, what technique is mentioned? All right, let's see. Okay, I didn't see it in here. I'm sure it's in here, but it's obfuscation. They're hiding something so that it's harder to detect. Keep in mind when you actually are defending against this, or attacking, I'm sorry, even in pen testing, a lot of times I don't have to beat your systems. It's not that bad. I just need to beat your analysts, meaning if I make an attack look legit, most of the time they'll go, oh, this is benign, it's another false positive, and they'll move on. What built-in feature makes creating a malicious MS Office document possible? And that's macros. But keep in mind, that's a way to weaponize, right? We'll say that. Okay, so now delivery. Okay, we've weaponized, we've done the recon, we've weaponized our attack, we're ready to go, right? We've got everything set up and staged, ready. What do we do? How do we get it to you? Am I gonna call you on the phone, pretend to be help desk or someone and get you to go to a website? Am I gonna send it to you in an email? Am I going to shoot you a Slack message or a Discord message, whatever? How am I gonna get you this payload, right? And that's where you gotta look. And this is where you got to do, hopefully you did your recon well enough that when you're in the recon phase, you should know what communications channels they use, who they talk to, all that stuff, and you should be able to make it look pretty legit. And you can see file sharing platforms, all that stuff, SMS phishing, social engineering, physical means. The malicious code might be saved on a flash drive. This is an old school technique. People used to go drop USB, stuff like that. Still could technically. What method involves showing advertisements on legitimate websites? So this is something you actually see quite a bit. And this is, you go to like a legit website and you host an ad on that site, right? And the ad is like goes to something malicious. So we'll say I'm typing malverting. Did I spell that wrong? Malvertising, excuse me. And what it is, again, you probably all know what I'm talking about. You go to a site, there's ads on both sides, it's all over the place. And if you click one, it's taking you to a malicious site. What phishing attack sends text messages? And this is smishing. And it sends a text message that convinces you to download something, whatever. A lot of people actually think that these don't work. I promise you they do. I see them all the time. And I will tell you, too, a lot of them that work, most people think, like, I would never click that. I'm too smart, blah, blah, blah. Go look at some of the bigger YouTubers that have been hacked. They're not, like, dumb people. It's literally, it can happen to anybody. There's literally, like, I've talked to some cyber guys that have gotten hacked, and one of the guys clicked on a phishing link, and you're like, dude, you do this for a living. How did you do it, right? And it's simple. It was perfect scenario. The example I'm talking about, the person got a Amazon. They ordered an Amazon package that was like critical to something. They needed it like the next day. And then they literally get an email that day of, there's something wrong with your Amazon package. Please click here, right? Now, did that person get targeted? Probably not. It was probably just a random malicious email, but it was like perfect scenario where he went, oh crap, and like clicked it real fast and then instantly knew, but it's too late. Like you already clicked it. So it can happen to anybody. Don't fool yourself by thinking you're better than that. Everybody has probably been hacked in some facet or capacity. So now we've delivered it. Now we got to exploit it, right? This is where a lot of people, usually see it, right? The actual exploit, the actual takeover, the actual something happening, depending on how it works, right? They can use various system or ways. The most straightforward approach is targeting a password-based authentication. Yep, the still most common is like to log in There are many other vulnerabilities ranging from SQL injection. The security team can offer many disruptions. So this is MFA prevents an attacker from achieving this. That's true, but then there's MFA bypass, which is another weaponization and another exploit entirely. Patch management, make sure your systems are patched, all that stuff. But if you find someone in the exploit phase, right, what does that mean? That means they got through your delivery, and their weaponization you're not going to do much. You can't do much on because it's on their side, but they got through your delivery, so your delivery filters need fixed, and they've got through, and whether they exploit or not is up to you, but hopefully they didn't. Hopefully you caught them in this. So what type of exploit is used before the vendor becomes aware of a vulnerability? Nope, not 0 day. What type of exploit is used before the vendor becomes aware of the vulnerability? Let's see what it's calling it. Software vulnerabilities. Excuse me. Let's see. Patch management, intrusion prevention systems. Yep, all that's true. I don't see software vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities can cover both. New vulnerabilities are discovered regularly. It's usually only a matter of time before attackers. Yep. Sometimes an exploit is made available before the vendor becomes aware. It's called a 0. Okay, so it is 0 day. I just needed to have the correct exploit. What technology is mentioned to prevent an attacker from gaining access even with login credentials? One thing I will say is MFA bypass is not very difficult. Please don't get hung up on if you have MFA, you're safe. Just be aware that there is MFA bypass. And it's not very complex. So now you have your installation, right? Now I need to install something that keeps me there, because typically when you take over an account, right, that's a temporary solution. I have the account, I have this, I have access to something, I have machine, I have whatever, but you're going to either A, find out, B, your password's going to change because most people's do, or C, you're going to close that process or whatever that I've taken over and I lose access. So I need to install something that keeps me there, right? So regardless of the approach, persistent access must be guaranteed in the future. Otherwise, the attack's pretty much dead in the water, because, yeah, I can grab some stuff quickly, but eventually it's going to, you shut the computer off, I have to redo the whole thing, it doesn't work, blah, blah. Attackers might resort to installing malware, creating backdoors, or installing rootkits. Furthermore, they may take advantage of built-in systems. This is called living off the land binaries. This is one of my favorite techniques as a pen tester. Most of you, if you've watched my videos, you know that like I almost exclusively like to live off the land. It's slower for sure. It's, you know, I could run a script like, you know, WinPeas or LinPeas or something, but the likelihood of me getting caught, even if I use a lot of my techniques to evade detection and stuff like that, you still have a chance of getting caught. So I like to use as much of the living off the land as I can. It also depends on time sensitivity. If you're, you know, if I have to do a pen test very quickly, I'm not going to be as stealthy, obviously, and vice versa. So let's see. Countermeasures. So yes, EDR will help here. They catch unusual processes, creations, all that stuff. Regular system audits. One thing I will say is it's very easy to get monotonous and start kind of like ignoring certain things. What I mean by that is, like, I've seen people where they don't even notice that, like, they have, like, the people on that had the machine, like, after an incident, had local admin access, and you're like, how did they have local admin access? And it would be something insane that is like, well, they kept calling help desk because they needed help all the time, and so help desk is like, here, you can just install it, right? And give them admin access, and you're like, how do you not have detection on if someone becomes local admin, like stuff like that? So be prepared that there's ways around a lot of this. What tactic allows attackers to execute operating system commands on a target via a web browser interface? And it should be web shell. What technique is mentioned to prevent the execution of unauthorized or malicious software by only allowing approved applications to run? I don't see it, but it could be whitelisting. Nope. Execution of unauthorized. Allow listing. Okay. So same thing, but different name. All right, now command and control. Once they have a machine, they're going to start laterally moving. They're going to start doing stuff, a machine or account, whatever. and they're going to start having them all call back because they're preparing for the big data exfil or ransomware or whatever the big attack is going to be, right? And this is where if you can catch who is doing it, right? If you know who's doing it, you know what their objective is, I can start defending quickly for the actions on objective. If your defense, or excuse me, if your offense is to data exfil, that's a very different defense than ransomware. So let's defend accordingly, right? So here, there's a few examples. C2 infrastructures, HTTP, HTTPS, DNS, SMTP, blah, blah, all those. DNS tunneling is very difficult to detect because most people don't log DNS. If the attacker registers their own domain, uses it, it will be too easy to take down. Therefore, C2 relies on various techniques to ensure this is true. If you register a domain and it was registered like last week, it's very easy to detect. So usually they're looking for something different. The owner of the C2 infrastructures registers only 1 to 2%. The malware in turn will iterate over this extensive list until it finds an active one. If the domain gets blocked, the malware switches to the next active one. So it can just keep going, right? So they use a huge list and they just keep on running through them. And it's funny, this actually is something that it stems from a large attack that happened years ago. And I want to say it was the WannaCry, but I don't quote me on that. But anyway, it was stopped by a single person because the malware all called out to one domain. So what did he do? He identified it, and this is way back. You might say this is so simple now. It wasn't simple then. It was way back. He had it taken down. Malware no longer works because the C2 stopped, right? They ended up fixing it and changing it and redeploying all the attack, but still. What is the name of the tactic where data is hidden within DNS? And it is DNS tunneling. What protocol would the attacker use to smuggle his data as encrypted web traffic? And that would be HTTPS because it's HTTPS stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure or encrypted, right? Actions on objective. This is the big bang. This is the oh crap worst day of my life if I'm a defender. The attacker might be targeting an organization. The threat actor might be interested in manipulating ICS systems, so like your water treatment plants, your power plants, your big time stuff. Then you have, that's what they're talking about. Then you have data exfiltration. You have your, if they want to use you. So one thing you see a lot is their objective isn't you. Their objective is to take over your network to get someone further down the supply chain. And that's scary because if you don't know their objective, you're like, okay, I know these people have access in here and I'm like identifying it, but they're not taking anything. They're not doing anything. I don't know what to do. And a lot of times they're just trying to get to the next stage. So you got to be prepared for that as well and understand what you're dealing with. Countermeasures. So how can you stop that, right? Attackers can cause organizations need to consider network segmentation. So if you can take over this network, but you can't take over this network, that slows you down quite a bit or stops you. You can isolate systems. You can actually, some companies have in the past just taken down everything, right? You can pay them if it's a ransom, right? I don't recommend it, but you can, right? There's a lot of different ways that you can do something if they've already done this. And then you can also identify it, right? DLP systems will tell you like someone's exfilling data right now, cut it off, right? Like things like that. So you can start to figure this out. What is the term for stealing sensitive files from a target network? Data exfiltration. What principle limits who can access sensitive systems and data to minimize? And this is principle of least privilege. So principle of least privilege, pretty self-explanatory. You give the person that's whatever, the person that needs it, the least amount of privilege they need to do their job. Don't give them any more. What type of attack involves encrypting files? And this is ransomware. We all are familiar with that. All right, so conclusion. We're going to view this site and we're going to go through it. One thing I want to point out is this kill chain is so important to fully understand because you can build your defense around it. You can build your response around it. You can build your attack around it. You can do everything. And if you break it down into sections, you can improve every section of it. If there's bottlenecks, if there's things slowing you down, any of that, you can improve every facet of it. Okay, so let's go to Smishing, we know that's going to be delivery, right? And I'm not doing these in any particular order. Use HTTPS to C2. Who is query is recon. All right. Create a backdoor. That would be exploitation. Manipulate would probably be... Why are these so out of order? Are they supposed to be out of order? They're like really out of order. Create a phishing email is that, and then exploit a publicly facing. We'll say, whoops, I can't move it. Why can't I move it? So once you put it there, that's it. I can't move it. Yeah. Okay. Why are these out? This is weird. It's only weird because it's out of order. Okay. So exploit public facing, that'll be under exploit, but I couldn't move it last time. So once you put it there, it's it. Craft a phishing email is definitely the delivery. Use HTTPS to C2. Corrupt the data, that would be actions on objective, if that's your goal, right? Vulnerability scanning, that would be your recon. Malvertising would be your weaponization. Or I'm sorry, that would be your delivery. Oh, you can do it. You just gotta do it that way. Okay, excuse me, sorry. And then install a rootkit. Sorry, that was confusing because I thought I couldn't move it, but you can. So if you need to move it, just take it and move it, put one in its place, and it'll send it back up. So, all right, there you go, guys. Hopefully this helps you guys. Hopefully you guys learned something, and hopefully you guys have a great day. Thank you guys. Like, subscribe, all the jazz. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you.